Why poverty is more dangerous than you think. Poverty is not just painful, it is dangerous. Poverty is not just empty pockets, it is empty choices. It is waking up every day, calculating survival, instead of imagining possibility. Poverty doesn't just make you hungry, it makes you careful. Too careful to dream, too careful to fail, too careful to try. It teaches you to accept less, and call it humility. It teaches you to endure suffering, and call it destiny. But poverty is not noble. It is not holy, and it is not harmless. Poverty is dangerous, not because people are poor, but because poverty convinces good people to stop asking questions. The most dangerous thing about poverty is not hunger. It's what it convinces you to accept, because it rewired the mind. Poverty is often misunderstood. Many people think poverty is simply the absence of money, but poverty is much more than that. Poverty is the absence of options, the absence of exposure, the absence of confidence, the absence of imagination. When a person grows up without choices, their thinking becomes narrow, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack experience. You cannot desire what you have never seen. You cannot plan for what you don't believe is possible. That is how poverty begins to operate, quietly, not just in the wallet, but in the mind. Poverty does not affect individuals alone. It affects households. Parents, without meaning to, pass down survival beliefs. Be grateful for anything. Don't aim too high. That life is not for people like us. Children grow up learning endurance, not expansion. They learn how to manage lack, not how to create abundance. Talent gets buried under responsibility. Dreams get postponed until things get better. And many times, things never do. Poverty doesn't just limit money, it trains families to think small, generation after generation. Environment educates, even when no one is teaching. In some places, the waste bin of the wealthy contains cartoons, toys, furniture, electronics, things that once brought comfort and joy. Meanwhile, the bedroom of the poor is empty. The kitchen of the wealthy looks like paradise. Variety, cleanliness, nutrition. While the entire house of the poor feels like struggle. This is not about envy. It is about exposure. Children raised in scarcity don't lack ambition. They lack reference points. Like what would they say they wanted to improve on? Someone that was strongly warned, if not beating, for breaking the remote control, compared to another child that was praised for breaking the remote control, that he's experimenting the remote system. Standards are learned by sight, not by lectures. On a larger scale, poverty weakens societies. It encourages short-term thinking. It reduces innovation. It makes manipulation easy. When people are poor, they trade long-term growth for short-term relief. In developing countries, they call it stomach infrastructure. They accept broken systems because resistance feels risky. If you are arrested, who will bail you? You can't even afford legal services. Survival becomes more important than progress. And slowly, poverty becomes normalized. The religion sphere is where poverty becomes most dangerous. Not when people pray, but when poverty hides behind religion. When fasting replaces learning. When prayer replaces adaptation. When God's will replaces personal responsibility. Faith is powerful, but faith without growth becomes a cage. The world rewards value, competence, and excellence, not suffering. No amount of religious branding can replace skill. No amount of spiritual language can replace quality. Customers with refined taste already know better options. You cannot convince them with excuses disguised as faith. Religion was meant to give strength, not surrender. Poverty does not just remove comfort, it removes joy. There is no margin for mistakes, no space for rest, no room for exploration. Joy requires safety. Joy requires options. Joy requires stability. Poverty steals all three. But hear this clearly. Poverty may not be your fault, but staying there without questioning it is dangerous 100%. Poverty is not a destiny. It is a condition. And conditions can change. The way out of poverty does not start with money. It starts with awareness, with exposure, with learning, with building skills that solve real problems. You must become rich in understanding before you become rich in income. You must question what you accepted as normal. Learn what your environment never taught you. Seek knowledge that expands your options. Growth is uncomfortable, but stagnation is deadly. Poverty is dangerous, not because it exists, but because it convinces good people to stop trying. Do not pass limitation to the next generation. Do not confuse endurance with wisdom. Do not mistake survival for success. Think differently. Learn relentlessly. Build value. Because when the mind changes, options appear. And where there are options, there is freedom.